I'm Norma Sides, and I live in Hanover, but I was born in Shanghai, China in 1928. And I lived across the bridge in the section they call the Hongqiu district. And we lived there till I went to kindergarten there, and all my early years of education was done on that part of Shanghai. And suddenly, when I was 9 years old, there was talk of war. And the next morning, we woke up to this horrendous sound that we've never heard before. The Japanese attacked us on that side of Shanghai, Hongqiu. It happened very rapidly. People panicked. I ran out to the veranda, and I couldn't even see my street because it was covered with people, trampling people. And I looked at the Pierce apartments to my right, and a man was taking his bird in, and a shrapnel hit him, and he fell. So I saw that. And then my two young brothers were home with me, and we were left with one servant. The other, baby Amma, had gone to the market, so she would be on her way home. Everybody else in the family was not home. I ran in from the veranda, and I knelt down, and I prayed. And I was told to stay there. I took my two brothers, wrapped them in blankets, and the three of us hid under the bed. So we stayed there, and I knew someone would come to help us. And my oldest brother did show up. He was in a uniform, and he said, "We have no time, they're on the bridge. Please don't open your mouth. I will talk to the Japanese soldiers." And so baby Amma came home, and my mother came home, and we all headed for the bridge. Sure enough, the barbed wire was already closed. So my oldest brother spoke to the man, the soldier with the fixed bayonets, and I was like looking, and he said, and I put my head down like he asked me to, and he said, "My father's office is just down the street. Would you let us through, please?" So this soldier asked the other soldier. They talked about it. They came back, and they said, "Okay, go." So they opened the barbed wire, and we started up the bridge. When we got to the high part of the bridge, I didn't know what to think, because there was dead bodies all over the place. Babies were thrown to the left. There was trucks over here with adults. You couldn't see the street. People were everywhere. So it took us a long time to get to my father's office. We finally got there, and my father said, "We have to spend the night on my floor in the office." So we all slept on the floor on newspapers. And the next morning, my father went into the international settlement, which was like very British and safer, and found us an apartment to move into. And that started my chapter in life, to live through the Japanese. I don't know. I always say that it's God's blessing how things turned out. Yeah, but it was very scary because there were 25 ships bombing at us, and the flagship, the Izuma, which historically you will read when they attacked Shanghai, they were all shelling us, and you couldn't hear, you couldn't think. All you saw was blood and dead people. The Americans came in 1945 and freed us. So from 1937 to 1945, when the Americans freed us, we had no light, no water. You had to go to the store to buy your hot water, okay? And the Japanese would appear at your house surprisingly. You open the door, they would knock, and there'd be 4 or 6 soldiers with fixed bayonets, and you'd say yes, and I bowed like I was told to, and they said checking, and they went to the wall where the first radiator was and started pulling all the radiators out. The plaster came crashing down, the walls, like all this mess, just me and my 2 young brothers and the baby Amma, and you can't say a word. I said, oh, what is this for? And they said, bullets. We need the metal for bullets. So after they tore your whole house apart, now you're left with no heat or anything. So everybody survived on charcoal. We had little stove that we put out on the porch with charcoal, and that was the only way we could cook. But we went to school till we couldn't, and they took our schools away and put us in horse sheds in one of the roads. So we had to walk miles to go to school, and finally we couldn't, because we weren't allowed to go outside of your house after 4 p.m. because you would be raped and you would never come home again. Yeah. So that's how we survived, and I really didn't have too much to eat. We were all hungry, very hungry, all the time. And if I survived on a sweet potato that my uncle bought me when I went to the hot water store to get the hot water to make tea, I really knelt down and thanked God for that. But the pain in my stomach being hungry was really bad. And the Americans came, and the word got to us and said, we're safe now. And the Bund, the Wampu River, the blockade was over. We weren't hearing shelling or bullets or barbed wire or anything. So the Americans came and took over, and we couldn't believe it. And all of a sudden, we had the stores begin to open. There was food again. So yes, it was a very happy time. So I got myself downtown, sat in front of an officer. He interviewed me, and he hired me right there. I went, oh dear. So then...
You were 18.
I was 18. And then I said, so when do I start? He said, in an hour, the weapons carrier's coming, and you're going right out to work. Okay, and that's how it started. So my husband, who landed all the planes at the air base, worked in the control tower, said, oh, let me introduce you to Bob. And that's how we started. And from that day, he called me every day. So then he asked me out, and he took me to the French section of Shanghai, and he took me to the Balalaika restaurant. So we had a meal, and we danced, and to me every day, and came to see me every day. He grew on me, and I finally I like his values, and I like, this. And then I loved how he had he had a widow's peak here, one piece of hair that would come down, and he was so dependable, so thoughtful, and those are the qualities that I love. Wonderful. Married 58 years. Yeah, till he died. Yeah.